These are unusual prizes. Most prizes in the world are for the very best something. Nobel Prizes for the best science, Olympic prizes for the best athletes. There are a few prizes for the very worst things. There's the worst dressed prize. There are prizes for bad movies. The Ig Nobel is different. It has nothing to do with whether something is good or bad. Whether something's good or bad, that is irrelevant. Whether something is important or trivial or worthless, that is unimportant. The only thing that matters is that everything that won a prize is something that makes people laugh, then think. It has that double quality. And that's an unusual quality if you think about it. If you try to manufacture that quality, you'll find it's difficult, maybe impossible. It's a quality that simply appears. And you're welcome to try if you want, but let me show you. Okay. Doors are right there. This is a paper published in 1967 in a biology lab in Fort Detrick, Maryland. This is the laboratory in the United States where if there's any extremely dangerous biological material, that's where it's brought to analyze it. They're very careful about things. This was written by the people who run the safety part of that lab. And as you can see, the paper they published is called Microbiological Laboratory Hazard of Bearded Men. The question was, is it safe to allow a scientist who has a beard to work in that laboratory? And this was started because a scientist wanted to grow a beard, and his supervisor said, no, it's not safe. And he said, well, prove it. Here's a little detail of how the work was done. And many years later, this work was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize. A few years after that, I invited the lead author to come and speak at an event a little like this. There's, in the United States, there's a thing called the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They publish Science magazine. They have a big annual meeting every year. It moves around from big city to big city in the US. And every year for 25 years now, we do a show, sort of like what I'm doing now at that event. And I invited the lead author to come there. So he came, and he gave the talk. People were very appreciative. And it was the first time he had ever talked about this in public. It was not secret. It's just nobody had ever asked him to talk about this in public. Afterward, people were going up to shake his hand. And I talked to a lot of people in the audience. There were people there from around the world, many of them who work in biology labs. And several from different parts of the world told me that their safety procedures, they now realize, were based on this paper. So you never know what's going to have an effect. This is a picture of a penguin. And you may know that many penguins, when they defecate, when they excrete, they send out a long stream to the rear, which is why you can get photographs like this. You can see evidence. We gave an Ig Nobel Prize to the international team of biologists who calculated, and physicists, they calculated how much pressure must build up inside a penguin to make this possible. This paper is called An Analysis of the Forces Required to Drag Sheep Over Various Surfaces. The scientists who wrote this are from Australia. And this, too, won an Ig Nobel Prize. When we give prizes, almost always we get in touch with the person or the team that we have selected, and we very quietly offer them the prize. We give them the chance to say no if they want to. Almost always they say yes, but if they want to say no, that's the end of it, and we never tell anybody. When I got in touch with them, it turned out they knew a lot about the Ig Nobel Prize. They had been following it, reading about it every year. They never dreamed they would get one. The reason that that conversation sticks in my mind, though, is that conversation where I offered them the Ig Nobel Prize, that conversation was the first moment any of them realized that what they had done is funny. They were dealing with the local industry. Sheep is a big industry there, and the local industry had asked them to come in, spend a year or so looking at everything they do and tell them how to improve it, which they did. I won't go into much detail. I'll mention just one thing. That one of these authors, John Culvenor, has sometimes come on these kinds of events with me and done a talk. And one of the things he says, and he always looks embarrassed when he says this, he said, one of the main things we discovered is it is easier to drag a sheep downhill. This won the Ig Nobel Prize for Psychology in the year 2000. This is a paper by Kruger and Dunning, and it's called Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. Let me read that again. Unskilled and unaware of it, how difficulties in recognizing one's own incompetence lead to inflated self-assessments.
Is this about Donald Trump?
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say? Step on my lines before? Yeah. It's a very interesting paper. I urge you, all of these things you can find easily. We have links on our website, improbable.com. This paper especially, I would urge you to read it because I am quite certain everybody in this room has encountered the kind of people that were described in that paper. So anyway, that's a quick look at some of the past winners. We have been giving 10 Ig Nobel Prizes every year since 1991. It's 270 of them so far. It's a lot. This is our logo, which I think probably explains itself. Improbable Research, that's the name of our magazine, the Annals of Improbable Research, and it's what we collect, it's what we look about. By improbable, we mean it's not what you expect. It's not likely in your mind. That's the quality we look for. Again, things that make people laugh and then think. And with the magazine, with the Ig Nobel Prizes, with everything else we do, we're collecting real things. If you run across something, let us know. There's a lot of stuff out there. If you win an Ig Nobel Prize and you accept it, you get an Ig Nobel Prize. It's a different design every year. What's common across all the years is it's always made from extremely cheap materials. You also get a piece of paper which says you have won an Ig Nobel Prize. That piece of paper is signed by several people who have a Nobel Prize. So it's a nice piece of paper to have. There is a tradition among many of the Ig Nobel winners that they take that piece of paper back home, wherever they live in the world. They get it put in a nice frame under glass, and then they hang that frame in their home right above the toilet. Most, or many, at least, prizes in the world also come with cash. If you win, you get some money. And we never have any money, so we were never able to do that. And yet, a few years ago, we figured out a way. And now every winner, or every winning team, gets cash. They get a lot of cash. They get $10 trillion. They get a $10 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. The person responsible for creating these also has won an Ig Nobel Prize in mathematics, Dr. Gideon Gono, who was head of the National Bank in Zimbabwe. And this is where the ceremony is held. You get an invitation if you win to come to the ceremony. You have to travel at your own expense because, again, we have no money. We do offer to put you up as a guest in somebody's home for a few nights, and that usually works out very well. This is Sanders Theater. This is on the campus of Harvard University. This is the biggest classroom at Harvard. It's the biggest meeting place. It fits 1,100 people. It's always completely filled on Ig Nobel night. We webcast it live. We started webcasting in 1995. We had to more or less be inventing the technology because there was no webcasting then. And you see paper airplanes. This started, I think, the second year of the ceremony, where the audience just started bringing lots of paper, and they make paper airplanes, and they throw them. And the people on stage throw it right back. Okay. Here's a quick look at the most recent Ig Nobel Prize winners. The Ig Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded to Marc Abrahams, who's in Paris. He won for using fluid dynamics to probe the question, can a cat be both a solid and a liquid? He wrote a paper called On the Rheology of Cats. Okay, and you know, rheology is the study of things that flow, and that's what he was looking at. Here's a little bit of detail from that paper. Okay, here's some more. And Marc Abrahams was part of a show I did a week ago in London at Imperial College, and he'll be joining me again in about 2 or 3 weeks, where we're doing a show up in Stockholm at the Karolinska Institute. If any of you are going to be in Stockholm that day, I hope you'll come and join us. And you can talk to him. You can ask him questions about this. Here he is at the moment he's receiving his prize. What happens is the winners are kept secret until they appear on stage. Great secrecy. And then we introduce them. The winner comes out, and there's a Nobel Prize winner waiting to shake their hand and hand them their prize. As you see here the moment when he is getting his prize. Here he is giving his acceptance speech. The ceremony is very complicated. There are many parts. We have 10 winners who are each going to give an acceptance speech, and we do a lot of other things between. We work very hard to engineer the night so everything moves quickly. Nobody likes sitting through a long speech. And I'm sure you've suffered through long speeches. That used to happen to us, and then we finally solved the problem. What we do is we tell each of the winners, you're going to get to talk longer than anybody else. You'll get about 1 minute, about 60 seconds. And the way we help enforce this time limit is every year we go out and we find a little 8-year-old girl, a very cute little 8-year-old girl. She sits on the side of the stage. Maybe some of you are familiar with this. Maybe you've seen video of some of this. There's lots of it on the net. She sits on the side of the stage. I introduce her at the start of the night. I explain whenever she feels somebody has talked long enough, she will let them know. I ask her to demonstrate. This little, cute little girl walks all the way across the stage. She goes right up to the person who's standing at the microphone talking. She looks up at that person and she says, "Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored." She doesn't stop until they do. Okay. And it works. Here's Marc Abrahams finishing his speech with some help from the little girl. The Ig Nobel Peace Prize. Some people consider this to be the most prestigious of the Ig Nobel Prizes. The Peace Prize was awarded to a large team from Switzerland, Canada, the Netherlands, and the USA. They're mostly based in Switzerland, in Zurich. They were honored for demonstrating that regular playing of a didgeridoo, you know that instrument from Australia, the long instrument produces a very deep sound. They demonstrated that regular playing of a didgeridoo is an effective treatment for sleep apnea and snoring. They published this paper called Didgeridoo Playing as Alternative Treatment for Obstructive Sleep Apnea Syndrome, randomized control trial. Here's some detail from that paper. Okay, and here are the winners. Next week, if any of you travel to Lausanne, doing an event at EPFL with two of the authors of this, and they're going to be demonstrating there. So it's a Tuesday of next week. So if you're free, come on up to Lausanne and join in. Okay, you can see them finishing their speech here. The Ig Nobel Prize for Economics. It's been a peculiar thing about this prize. Most of the winners for most of the prizes every year come to the ceremony. This prize has been something of an exception. Some years the winners come, but many years the winners have not been able to. They have a previous engagement of 5 to 15 years in prison somewhere. The Ig Nobel Economics Prize this year was awarded to a team from Australia. They won for experiments they did to see how contact with a live crocodile affects a person's willingness to gamble. They describe their work in this paper called Never Smile at a Crocodile. Betting on electronic gaming machines is intensified by reptile-induced arousal. That's a nice phrase. You might consider saving that phrase and trying to work that into a paper that you write. Reptile-induced arousal. This is some detail from that paper. And here is one of the co-authors. This is the crocodile they used, and this is the setting. This was a place where gambling happens. This is where they did it. And here are the two authors at the Ig Nobel ceremony giving their acceptance speech. I do not know why she has that expression on her face. We thought that this is a slightly subtle thing that they were doing here, and that it might be helpful to the audience at Harvard to explain a little more and to have a demonstration. So we asked one of the Nobel laureates who was present to come and sit on a chair in the middle of the stage, and then we brought out this box. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail about what happened after that. The Ig Nobel Prize for Anatomy. By the way, there are different categories every year, and in case you're wondering, the categories are not sacred. Often, what was done to win a prize is so unusual that there's no obvious category, and we have to invent one. But this one, we chose anatomy as the category. The Anatomy Prize went to Dr. James Heathcote from London. He won for his medical research study called Why Do Old Men Have Big Ears? And here is that study called Why Do Old Men Have Big Ears? This was published in the British Medical Journal. Here's some detail. And in case you'd like some data, here's some data. Okay. And this one you can go and gather additional data on your own, pretty easily probably. Here's Dr. Heathcote. He's just been handed his $10 trillion bill. You can see he's happy about that. The Ig Nobel Biology Prize was awarded to a team from Japan, Brazil, and Switzerland. They were honored for their discovery of a female penis and a male vagina in a cave insect. Here's their paper called Female Penis, Male Vagina, and Their Correlated Evolution in a Cave Insect. This is some detail. I'm sure all the body parts are clear to all of you. The team was very eager to come to the Ig Nobel ceremony, but they could not because they had already scheduled time to go out into the field, into a cave, and do research. And so they video recorded themselves giving their acceptance speech, and they sent it in advance. We played it at the ceremony. It's short. I'm going to play for you now their acceptance speech. Okay, this is inside a cave.
It's a great honor to receive the Ig Nobel Prize.
We have sound problems.
We are exploring some caves this time in Japan, and unfortunately could not attend the ceremony.
In the study, we reported a sex-reverse cave insects in which Females have a penis.
Yes, I think their sex life every 30 minutes and found out the females conquer the males by using her spiny penis up to 70 hours.
Many dictionaries around the world express penis as a male structure. Our discovery made billions of dictionaries out there.
So let's explore further improbable insects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Ig Nobel Prize for Fluid Dynamics was awarded to Ji-won Han from South Korea. He was a high school student when he did this work. He was honored for studying the dynamics of liquid sloshing. That is a technical term. The dynamics of liquid sloshing, to learn what happens when a person walks backwards while carrying a cup of coffee. Here's his paper called A Study on the Coffee Spilling Phenomenon in the Low Impulse Regime. This is a little bit of detail from it. Okay. He was building on earlier work that had also won an Ig Nobel Prize. The earlier work was done by some physicists in California, University of California at Santa Barbara. They had examined what happens when you hold a full cup of coffee and walk forwards. I'm sure you've discovered this yourself, but they discovered more detail than you probably know. They worked out the physics of it. And what they found was that it's nearly impossible for a human being to walk and not spill coffee. The physics demands that. And what happens, what you've seen, what I'm sure almost everybody here has thought about even quite a bit, is it sloshes. It starts to oscillate. And you get resonance. And so, of course, it's going to spill. That was the thing that won a prize about 10 years ago. Over in South Korea, a high school student read that paper and wondered what happens when you walk backwards. And so he did some experiments, he did some theoretical work, and he discovered it's a different story. It's not at all the same story. That most people are not very good at walking backwards. You can see when I'm doing it now, I start and stop. And so most people do not get into that kind of rhythm. It doesn't slosh as much. So if you're worried about spilling your coffee while you walk, you are better off walking backwards. Better off in most ways. There are some reasons not to do that, which may occur to you. Here is the winner at the Ig Nobel ceremony, demonstrating part of what he found. You may have noticed there's a man on the left who's painted silver and not wearing hardly any clothing at all. Would anyone care to hear why he's there? His name is Jim Brett. Jim Brett is Dr. Jim Brett. He has a PhD from MIT, from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is an inventor. He's invented lots of things. He's here in the role of human spotlight. He holds a flashlight and he illuminates the proceedings. Jim Brett has invented many things. He started several companies. He's got lots of patents. All the things that he's invented, as far as I'm aware, there are two truly great things. One is this idea of the human spotlight. The other is, you've heard of a thing called 3D printing? Jim Brett is one of the people who invented 3D printing. Okay. Same guy. The Ig Nobel Nutrition Prize was awarded to a team from Brazil, Canada, and Spain. They were honored for the first scientific report of human blood in the diet of the hairy-legged vampire bat. Their paper is called What's for Dinner? First report of human blood in the diet of the hairy-legged vampire bat. And here's the team. They also were not able to travel, but they prepared a short video acceptance speech. Here it is.
We have to make a speech to accept this outstanding prize. Fernanda, do you accept the prize? Mm-hmm. Rodrigo, do you accept the prize? Mm-hmm. We do accept the prize.
The Ig Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded to a team based in France. They won the prize for using advanced brain scanning technology. This is an fMRI study. They used advanced brain scanning technology to measure the extent to which some people are disgusted by cheese. Their paper is called The Neural Bases of Disgust for Cheese, an fMRI study. Here is the lead author in his office. The Ig Nobel Prize for Cognition was awarded to a team based in Italy. They were honored for demonstrating that many identical twins cannot tell themselves apart visually. Right. Here's their paper called, Is That Me or My Twin? Lack of Self-Face Recognition Advantage in Identical Twins.
Does that ever happen to somebody who's not an identical twin?
Pardon?
Does that ever happen to somebody who's not an identical twin?
Well, the question is, does that ever happen to somebody who's not an identical twin? I can think of several possible questions you're asking by saying that. So let me just say yes. This is detail from the paper. In case you hadn't noticed, on the bottom, those are upside down faces. And here are two of the authors at the Ig Nobel ceremony. We, for this prize, also organized on stage at the ceremony a little demonstration. We got two identical twins, both of them doctors, physicians. And we had them stand, and then we got a photograph of the face of one of them. We asked them to turn around, and each of you, please try to tell us, do you know who is in this photograph? And they could not do it. And then the final, the 10th prize for the year was in the field of obstetrics. I think it's the first time we've ever given a prize in this field of obstetrics. This went to a team of doctors from Spain. They're all in Barcelona. They won for showing that a developing human fetus responds more strongly to music that's played electromechanically inside the mother's vagina than to music that's played electromechanically on the mother's belly. They published a paper describing their work. Their paper is called Fetal Facial Expression in Response to Intravaginal Music Emission. This is the kind of data they were gathering. And here's a diagram of the work as they did it. They also developed a product for this, which they call Baby Pod, which you can purchase. This is Baby Pod. You can get this on Amazon on the web. And here are three of the co-authors. The one in the middle is the lead author on this, holding a baby pod. They also will be joining me in a couple of weeks at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. So if you want to meet them, or if you travel to Barcelona, they love to have visitors to their clinic. So please feel free to get in touch with them. And if you've used BabyPod, I'm sure they would love to hear about your own experience with it. By the way, I'm told BabyPod makes a lovely gift. So that's a quick look at the most recent Ig Nobel winners. At the end of the ceremony, we ask all of the new winners, all of the Nobel Prize winners, everybody else involved in the ceremony, to gather at the center of the stage for this pointless photo opportunity. And I won't tell you much more about the ceremony. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, but I will tell you about one thing. Every year, we write an opera, a small opera, a mini opera, about something in science, and we try to make it funny. We steal music from old dead composers. It's performed by professional opera singers and by those Nobel laureates, And I want to show you the final song, the concluding song from the new opera. This opera is about some psychology research, a couple of things that won Ig Nobel Prizes. And in particular, it's partly about this, which you now are familiar with. And I'll remind you again, it's called Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. The authors, Dunning and Kruger, you may have seen those names in the news, especially in the past year. This paper is very well known in the psychology world, and it's now getting known in outside worlds. And it's now described as the Dunning-Kruger effect. The main part of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that when they test people who are incompetent at something, doesn't matter what it is, but they keep finding different people anywhere, any group of people they've ever tried, when they ask people who are incompetent, how good are you compared to other people? The incompetent people, far more often than not, say, well, I'm pretty good, I'm one of the best. But they're not. So that's part of it. In this song that you're going to see, the end of the opera, the main character here is a psychologist. And he is a very confident psychologist. He walks into a bar. He goes into a pub. He's a stranger. He walks into this pub, and he decides he's going to explain the Dunning-Kruger effect to all these strangers. That's what you'll see, and you'll see how the people in the bar react to him.
Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger. Psychologists have shown that people unskilled at something somehow do not know their own incompetence. No! Incompetence. Some people's own incompetence somehow gives them a stupid sense that anything they do is first rate. They think it's great. But no, it's not. The research clearly shows such people's perceptions as a distraction.
The singer is named Ray Bowens. You can see the whole opera if you want to. It's up on the web. The next Ig Nobel Prize ceremony will be in September. I hope you will join us if you come over to the US, or if not, you can stay up late and watch the live webcast. The winners are secret, and this is the time of year when we're choosing the new winners and informing them. It's always possible, if you're sitting in a group of people, that somebody perhaps sitting next to you might be winning an Ig Nobel Prize, and you'll just have to wait and see. If you know of somebody who you think should win an Ig Nobel Prize, somebody who's done something that makes people laugh and think, please let us know. Just send us an email. This is how we learn about almost everything that wins a prize. One person, just one person somewhere notices something and they tell us about it. So please. Here's my magazine. It comes out 6 times a year, and it's full of things like that, full of things from almost every field in existence, some new, some old. And it's mostly citations of these things so that you can go and look up the thing itself and see all the good parts. Some of them are wonderful, some are terrible, but we hope they all have this quality. They make people laugh and think.